So we've got a jointed edge on this side. So the first thing I'll do is I need to square this up so it's the same width all the way through. So I'll just run that through the table saw and we'll just clean this edge up here. So what we've got here is a StewMac fret slotting template. It's got two scars, one on each side. This side's got fender 25.5, which is the scar we're after. And you've got these little indents all the way along. Okay, you'll see that if I line it up like this, each of these slots coincides with one of the indents. The first thing we need to do is we've got the fender 25.5 scar, so this is the scar we want to use. We basically, now we've got all this nice and square, we double side tape that right to the edge here, and then we take it over to the table saw and we can slot the frets. Now you're also going to need a very fine kerf blade for cutting the slots, something like that. So the way this jig works is you've got the board attached to the template. Now you've got an indexing pin which is just here, and that just slots in and locks on these little cutaways here. So we adjust the height of the blade, we lock it in, we push it through, we make a cut, then we move it on to the next one, and so on until we get through the whole fretboard. So this is the slotted fretboard. We remembered to slot 21 frets only. It's quite easy to add an extra one in accidentally. So I'll just detach that and we can radius it now. So the next step is to radius the fretboard. Now I've taken a slice off on the table saw, so it's just a little bit narrower than the width of my radius block. This is a 12-inch radius. It's an aluminium sanding beam from radiusing beam from Stuart McDonald. So these are just a couple of jointed pieces of wood that I use. I just put a couple of pieces of double-sided tape on them, and I use my table saw for radiusing the fretboard. It's a nice flat surface. So I use the radius block as a guide to set the outside rail. You don't want any slop in that. You want that to slide up and down or forwards and backwards with no side to side play. We need to mark a centre line at both ends of the fretboard. I just put a piece of masking tape at the start there. Put my sanding beam back in. Now I've actually marked the centre of the sanding beam. There's a little line there, so I can transfer that mark onto the masking tape, and the same at the other end. Now it's just a matter of aligning the centre line I marked on here with the centre line we've got marked on the tape. Like so. Then we know that the fretboard is now centred in between these two blocks, and we'll get an even radius on it. This is 80 grit sandpaper. Okay, this is where the hard work starts. We need to sand this radius into the fretboard. We need to be very even with our pressure, forwards and backwards, We want to keep checking all four corners to make sure that we're radiusing it evenly all the way across the fretboard. Just let the weight of the radius block and the sandpaper do most of the work. I'm not putting a lot of downward pressure on there. This dust that we're getting, I want to keep some of that for filling the slot ends later. So over the course of radiusing the block, I'll grab some of this. So we're getting very close now to having the radius sanded all the way through. Now what I've been doing as I go along is I've been taking measurements on each corner with my calipers just to make sure that I'm sanding it evenly. Now if I find that it's getting a bit low in one corner or at one end, it's just a matter of applying more pressure. You just with your hand pressure you can put more force on the end, or you can put more force on one side, or you can put more force on the front and on one side. That's just using your hands. You can just keep taking regular measurements as you sand it down to make sure each corner is very close. I mean, they're never going to be exactly the same, but you can get them pretty close. If you keep checking it, you'll end up with a very even radius. The fretboard is radius now. I'm just going to change out the sandpaper and move up to about 180 and give it a bit of a sand, and then probably to 220 just to get a nice smooth finish on the fretboard. Okay, well we're almost at a stage where we can glue the fretboard on now. We do need to notch this area here for the truss rod before we glue it on. So we'll take some measurements and we'll get that cut now. Got a couple of marks. Okay, so that's the area we need to remove. So we'll just make another really quick template with MDF and some double-sided tape. So I'm using the radius block as a clamp. I've got the radius on this side of the fretboard, so that'll sit in there nicely. So that's the notch we've just routed in, and it's going to sit over the top just like that. Now you'll notice that I've marked a line here, and what that is the start of the fretboard. It's where the fretboard is actually glued on. We align it with that line there. So this area here, we're going to knock all that out. That's where the nut actually goes, and we line our fretboard up with this line here. It's time to silicone the truss rod in. So what we're actually going to do is just squeeze some silicone into this area here, and we're also going to put some in here, and we'll put just a blob in the middle of the neck as well. That's to stop the truss rod from rattling. Now if we fill that with silicone and then push the truss rod in and let it squeeze out, I mean we do want it to squeeze out, we can clean it off later, it will fill any voids that we have on the sides, and that truss rod's not going anywhere. It's not going to move, and it won't vibrate either, and that's pretty much the objective of putting the silicone in there. And we'll also put a dab in the middle just to stop the truss rod from vibrating. Any excess we can just wipe off. Alright, so we've just got a little bit of double-sided tape on there. We've got some tape on here as well, so I can draw some lines on the back of the neck and they can be seen. So we want to align it on the edge here where we've marked the start of the fretboard, which is there, spot on, and also at the back. So we've now got a couple of lines that we can use. All of this is excess that we need to remove, so I'll rough cut that at the bandsaw, and then we'll glue the neck on and we'll be able to clean it up with the router. Right, next thing we're going to do is use a couple of little tacks for aligning the fretboard. Yeah, they're not very big, they're a millimetre thick. Now you obviously don't want to hammer these through too far, but just enough to stay in there. So we've got a tack just here, and then we've got a tack just up here as well. So one on each side. The idea of those tacks is they will lock into the fretboard and they'll stop it twisting when we're gluing it up. But for that to happen, we need to align the fretboard on the centre line and on the line at the side as well. We need to align it at the back. I want to be very careful doing this. This is the last chance you get to get your fretboard on straight. Alright, and once you're happy with that, just a bit of downwards pressure is all you need. And that'll force the pin into the top of the fretboard and it will make a mark for us. So if we flip that up, we've got a little mark there, which is a mark from the pin. So I'm just going to use a 1mm drill, and I'm just going to drill that out a little bit so that will slot over the pin. Okay, so I've drilled a couple of holes, one at the front and one at the back. You can just see the hole there. Now it's a matter of lining it up again where we were on the centre lines, and when you get it in the right spot you'll feel it fall down. Now that's locked on there, that's not going to move. So we'll slot the back in, and then once we're happy with the alignment we can put some glue on and we can glue the fretboard. Okay, so we're ready to attach the fretboard. What I'm going to do is just get a bit of acetone on a paper towel. Now I just want to clean the surface, the gluing surface, make sure everything's going to stick properly. First thing we want to do is put some tape on the side of the neck. So this will just catch any drips. Instead of it dripping down the neck and being a pain to get rid of, it'll flow onto the tape, which is a lot easier to deal with. We just put a little bit of tape over the truss rod temporarily so we can spread the glue all around here, and then we just lift that up at the last moment before we glue the fretboard on. Just use your finger to spread it out. You've got to work relatively quickly, but you don't want to panic either and mess something up. So just making sure it's all on the edges. We want a nice tight glue joint on the fretboard, and then I'll start moving it in a little bit. Okay. Alright, you're past the point of no return now. I felt that slot in straight away, and I felt that lock in on the other side as well. Have all your clamps ready. And we want to put some even pressure right the way across. Alright, that looks good. So we'll just leave that to dry now. If you've got an opportunity to clean some of the glue up before it dries, it's not a bad idea to just wipe it off if you can. Alright, well this is glued up overnight, so it's our first chance to see how it all went. Okay, that seems to have glued on quite nicely. We've got bits of squeeze out, glue squeeze out all the way along here. So we've got these edges here that we need to remove, and the way we do that is with a trim bit with a bearing on it. The idea is this will sit in the router table and the bearing rides along the flat surface here, and the blade will just clean all this up and take it flush to the surface. So we'll get that fixed up now. So this has just been routed and it's starting to look like a guitar neck now. It's we've got a nice join all the way along here, which is what we're after. Next thing we want to do is see the router table chipped a little bit of the nut material out, so it saves us doing it. There's still a bit in there that we need to get out, so we'll get that out next. The way we get this out is to just put a chisel in the middle there and give it a crack with a hammer. And once that's loose, we can just flip. Now I've got a nut file for cleaning out the bottom of the channel. Okay, next thing is to put the dot markers, the fretboard markers in. Now we're actually going to make our own markers, and we're going to make them to simulate the clay markers that they used to put in the old Fender necks, and I'll show you how we do that. Okay, what I've got here is just a piece of aluminium that I've cut off, and then I've drilled some holes through it, which are the diameter of the holes that I want to put in the neck. Now this is going to be a mould for the markers that we're about to fabricate. I've also got side dot markers here. So what we do is we use a bit of polymer clay. Now this is called flesh colour, number 43. There's two different fleshes. There's one's a darker one and there's a lighter one. You want the lighter one, and it's just a matter of taking it out, giving it a bit of a knead, just soften it up a little bit, and we just want to roll a little ball up and push it in. Pack it in nice and tight. Make sure it's slightly above, because we'll slice that off later and trim it up. So that's all done. We've got the fretboard markers, and then we've got the side dot markers. What I do with this now is you put it in the oven, 230 degrees Fahrenheit or 110 degrees Celsius, and you actually bake it for 30 minutes, and it sets these clay dots up, and then we just pop them out, and we've got some dot markers that are ready to go on the neck. Alright, so while those clay dot markers are in the oven, we can think about drilling the holes, marking out and drilling for the dot markers on the fretboard. So we'll just put a piece of tape down the centre of the neck. I want to be able to scribe a centre line that I can see down the middle, and obviously I don't want to draw on the fretboard at this point. So just a little bit of really low tack tape that'll come off very easily. This is just painter's tape, it's very low tack. Now I'm going to mark a centre line here with my calipers, mark a centre line here, or centre point, and then just draw a line down the middle of the neck. So it's a good idea, after we've got the line there, to actually mark the frets that receive a dot. You don't want to find after you've finished that you've drilled one at the 8th fret or the 2nd fret or something really stupid. There's a couple of ways that people do this. They will take a diagonal from fret to fret, draw a line across, spin the ruler, do it again that way, and then they just punch the centre that way. I prefer to use my calipers. Now I've already established the centre line, so what I would normally do, I just run my finger through where the frets are, and then I take a measurement like this. I halve that. And then I just make a mark, making sure I've got that lined up on the fret slot, of course. There we go. And then I'll just get one of my centre punches, just line it up on the hole, and just give it a tap. We've marked all of the fretboard markers, and now it's time to mark the side markers. So I've just ran another strip of low tack tape down the side here, and what you can do is you can actually use the marks that you've already punched for the front of the neck, and just transfer them onto the side. That way, if your markers are slightly off on the front, at least they'll match up with the ones on the side. Just follow that through with a square. and we'll just continue that all down the neck. So we've put a little mark on each of the frets here for the side markers, so we can go over to the drill press and we can start drilling those out now. Alright, well this is how I drill the dot markers on the side. I set the fence on my drill press and I reference the back of the neck. Off of that I use, this is a little offcut, it's a wedge shape and it's an offcut from the fretboard. Now I just use the thicker portion and I prop the neck up so the neck is level. Obviously it's tapered so it won't sit straight, so you need to put something under one end to get an even reference to drill. Now we've got the marks that we put on there earlier. I don't need to measure the depth down because I'm referencing off the back of the neck and I know my timber was all the same thickness. We've got no problems referencing off the back like that, and it should give us nice even dots all the way along the neck. Okay, as you get further along, of course you've got the headstock starts to cause a problem because of the width of it, so we need to add the block this side. Okay, there are holes drilled out, ready to be filled. Alright, so our dot markers are out of the oven now, so I'll just use a punch to push them out. Alright, you've got to be careful pushing them out because they fly everywhere. Okay, well these are the clay markers and they've come out really good. They seem to be pretty uniform in size. So there's two lots there, there's two batches. So we'll be able to put those in a minute. So we need to get an idea of how thick these are, so we know how far down to drill. It's 3.29. The thing about these is they're not going to be uniform. They're going to be quite different from one another. 3.35. This looks like a fat one. 3.64. Alright, so if I drill down just under 3mm on each of these holes, we should be okay. We'd be able to bottom these out, pushing them in, and still have them just a little bit up the top that we can sand off nice and smooth. So I'll set the depth stop on the drill press and that should take care of that. Okay, that's the holes all drilled, and they came out very good. And it's the same process for the fretboard markers as well. Just a bit of super glue. Okay, well this is the neck after all the markers are in. So we've got the side markers and we've got the front markers, the fretboard markers. Now I haven't sanded them flush yet. I just want to leave them and let them set, and then we can come back and sand them smooth. So they're a little proud to start sanding straight away, so I'm just going to file onto them and take some of the hide off them. This is just cleaning the dust that's built up in the fret slots. It's just a little scraper and it just pulls all the dust out. Alright, so that's our clay markers. They came out well. Just need to fix up the side dots now.